Welcome back, everybody. We have got some awesome guest recordings coming up. We're actually building a new studio at the moment and getting it ready to actually do some video podcasts properly again. So I'm really excited for when those come out. So keep an eye on the feed for those because they're going to be coming really, really soon. So it's great to be back. And I wanted to talk about something that's kind of quite personal to me, but will be really helpful for you too. And this episode is titled like Broke to Booked Out. And it doesn't matter what area of business you're in. One of the biggest challenges, and I'm going to share my experience on this, is how do I get from not having enough business to getting business consistently? And today what I'm going to talk about is my own personal experience of what I did to fix something I would never wish on somebody else. And I talk a lot about the feast and famine cycle that business owners go through. And it looks something like this. Number one, you're so busy, there's no time to market. And that can be over weeks, months, years, decades. You're so busy. And then you have a slowdown, whether there's work complete or what have you, but you end up with a slowdown. And so what happens is you have to scramble to fill that slowdown. And you hope something will stick. You throw stuff at the wall and hope something will come together. And if you're really lucky, you manage to fill that hole and the cycle goes round and round and round and round. And lots of businesses go through that feast and famine cycle, never building that predictability into their revenue, that consistency. In my scenario, I reached a point at one point where I was in that feast and famine cycle. And we come to the famine cycle, throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and it's not really working. So, I'm under financial pressure, I'm under cash pressure, and the desperation's in me, all of that kind of stuff is there. I'm starting to get to panic mode, and I've got bills racking up, and I'm like, you reach a point where maybe far more sensible people than me would reach a point where they go pragmatically, maybe I should give up on this business because, everything I'm trying is not working and I need some financial security and stability. Far more sensible people than me. What I got to the point is where I reached almost like the end of the road. And I had to find 13 grand in a week. The bank was empty. I was running on fumes. I had commitments and responsibilities to people. And I was reaching that point where I'm stuck. So the client flow, the leads weren't coming in like I'd hoped. The work I was doing to get more clients wasn't really paying off in the time frame I needed it to. So I was faced with, by Friday, I need 13 grand. and talking about it now, I'm like, you're absolutely nuts. But at the time, that's where I was, and I had to fix that. I was done. At the end of the week, not only would I be totally out of money, not only would I have run on fumes and gone negatively into debt, I would have let some people down. People who I'd promised money to who couldn't afford me not to pay them. So I was in whether it was a foolish position, a stupid position, I'll let you make that judgment. But I was there. And I want to talk about what I did to dig myself out of that in a week. Now, before I go into this, number one, I don't have millionaire parents. I don't have venture capital people. I rise and fall by my own efforts. There's nobody bailing me out. So for those of you listening, it's all right for him. And I see this on social media all the time. People say, well, if I had to start from scratch, and most of the time they don't start from scratch. They were born into very affluent families already. But I had to make it work. So I've got this week to go. And I'm feeling the pressure, and I just need to sell something. And so I quickly realized I needed people to make very quick, snap decisions about whether they should buy something or whether they shouldn't. And one of the things that makes it easier for people to buy what you've got to offer is if they have total clarity on what it is they're buying. Now, if it's something a bit woolly, a bit generic, a bit vague, a bit ambiguous, they will have to go on a journey to understand the value of that offer. I couldn't afford them to go on that journey. If I put a post out and said, hey, I can help grow your business and it's £750, people are like, how, what, it would create more questions than it would give answers. And I couldn't afford that, despite I see a lot of people doing that right now, across LinkedIn, across social media, wishy-washy, unclear offers, make no sense. You need a dictionary to work it out. It's just unnecessary words, vagueness, lack of clarity. I couldn't afford the time for people to go on that journey. So I had to create an offer that people could evaluate quickly and say, it is worth a punt. So I had to create that offer in a week and market it in a week. So first off, what I had to do is figure out, what are they paying for? What are they actually paying for? And they're not paying for me to do work. They're not paying for me to write content for them. They're not paying for my knowledge. They're paying for a result. Now, I can fix lots of things. I could offer to fix their email marketing. I could offer to fix their content. I could offer to fix their website. I could offer to fix their video graphics at this time when I was doing all of this stuff. I could offer to fix all of those things. But what I knew is the more complicated I make it, the more difficult the decision would be for the prospect. So I had to strip it down and give people a, do I want this? Do I not? So I had to give people a binary choice. And I'll be honest with you, as a human beings, we don't like binary choices, not as a seller. As a seller, I want to give my audience multiple choices because I get more chances to sell them something. But if I want people to make their mind up quickly, and I want people to go, yes, we'll go with that, I have to give them one thing. So I had to figure out one thing, one problem I could solve for them that would justify them handing over, at that point, 1,200 quid. What could I offer them for 1,200 quid that was a no-brainer decision that solved a problem they valued more than 1,200 quid? So I mapped that out, and I mapped it out to LinkedIn content. And I did a deal, silly deal back compared to prices now, that I would write 3 months worth of content for them, custom made, for 1,200 quid. Now that sounds dirt cheap, and but it wasn't back then when people didn't value LinkedIn content. 10 years ago, people didn't value LinkedIn content like they do now. But I put a deal together and said, if you're struggling to get out on LinkedIn, I can get you higher organic reach, higher engagement, all of the stuff that flips everybody's switches. I can send you viral. And I wrote that package, £1,200 for 3 months worth of content. And guess the only problem I was solving was one thing. You're struggling to get engagement and you want to get more reach and visibility across LinkedIn. And then as a bonus, I offered to grow their network. So I had a package, 1,200, 3 months worth of content and grow your network. And that's all I was doing. And it was 1,200 quid. I had to figure out how I sold 13 of those to basically get the money I needed. But the first part of this that I want to highlight is, if you need to sell something, you need to get really, really clear on why they should buy it. And the more things you introduce into that offer, the more complicated you make it, the more likely they're going to say no. I wanted people to make a binary choice. Do I want to grow my network? And do I want 3 months worth of content and get way more engagement and virality? And back then you could do a lot more. It was much easier than it is today. So I put that together. So I've got an offer. So now what I had to do is figure out, I put the price together. And to be honest with you, I'd put the price together based on how much I needed. That's a terrible mistake. Pricing based on your need is horrendous. I did it because I was in a pinch. And when you're in a pinch, you end up doing things that maybe you shouldn't do, or you know isn't good business practice. And I was there. I needed the money, so I priced to what I needed. 13 people's 3 months worth of content is a lot of work, but I priced to what I needed. If I'm running a lead generation system, a brand building, authority building, lead getting, client converting system, which is what I should have been doing, back then I should have been doing what I've been teaching now for nearly 8 years, that you need systems. I didn't have a system. So because I didn't have that system, because I didn't have that clarity of what I was doing, guess what? I was pricing to my need. if I'd had a system, I could have been consistently marketing on value, consistently communicating that value, consistently showing people why that value would make a difference for them, which would allow me to price on value. So that package could have been 2,400 quid. But because of where I was, because of the position I was in, desperate times, desperate measures. You never want to be in the situation that I was in. So I literally put that together as 1,200 quid. I'm solving one problem. You want to get more reach and engagement on LinkedIn. I will do 3 months of highly engaging content for you on LinkedIn, 1,200 quid. And I threw in the connecting, call it a bonus, whatever, because I knew if they were growing their network, it would be easier to get more engagement because there'd be a fresh new audience coming in. And let's be honest, most people's LinkedIn networks are full of old contacts, old friends, not clients. So I had to get more fresh people in there who potentially could be customers. So I put that package together and I did a one-pager. No website, no sexy landing page, none of that stuff, a simple one-pager. Literally dead simple. So now I had to get 13 people to buy it. Right now, if you're in a pinch and you're trying to get people to go from 0 to sold quickly, you have to kind of resort to very aggressive tactics. Again, if you don't want aggressive tactics, you have to have a system. You cannot just think that people will buy because you just show up and do your thing. Your thing has to be a plan. Your thing has to be well thought through and put together. But because I didn't have that and I needed money, I went all out on direct messaging. And I put that in front of 75 people, that one pager. I sent them a message saying, hey, I've got a promotion to help you get more engagement on LinkedIn and get your content in front of more leads and your ideal clients. Can I send you some details? So I sent that message, copy and pasted it to about 75 to 100 people. I can't be sure on the exact numbers because it was a while ago. But I think it was about somewhere between 75 and 100. Yeah, I got my 13. People asked for the details, and I had a time limit on the offer. So I said it's only available till Friday if you want it. Why Friday? Because I needed the money on Friday. And I did that, and I put that out. And, back then, messages weren't as saturated, and I got, guess what, 13 people. And I got it. And then for the next couple of weeks, I had my head down, literally repeating the cycle because I was so busy. I'd got that 13 grand to close a hole. But I learned my lesson and realized I never want to be in that hole, that feast and famine again. So I had to set up a plan to always be marketing, even when I'm overrun, even when I'm drained, even when I've got no time left, always be marketing, because I never wanted to go into that mode of being desperate or in such a cataclysmic pinch again. So I had to thrust myself out there into people's inboxes and just go for it. Now, somebody might say, well, why don't you just keep doing that? Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted people to come to me because of my expertise and my knowledge and all of that stuff. But I realized, and you may be realizing, when you're in a pinch, you just have to get out there and push your message and push your offer. But I never wanted to be there, so I had to build a system. And one of the big kind of scars from that experience has been almost a permanent panic mode. Yeah, permanent panic mode. And I've never shared this before, actually, that from being in those the dark, terrifying moment of financial oblivion, it constantly leaves me with this, I never want to be there again. I never want to be there again. And so what I do is I overcompensate on my marketing. Now, sometimes that means I'm a bit knee-jerk because I want to do things immediately. And sometimes, I overemphasize how many leads we get per day, because I never want to be there. And for me, that might sometimes feels like a curse of that experience. But actually, it's saved me a lot of pain and a lot of agony of repeating that feast and famine cycle. Now, I'd never wish my experience on anybody else of going through that feast and famine and then eventually being, days away from hitting a wall. But very often I've seen other people get close to that and just get a job. I've seen people give up on their dream, quit and get a job because they're approaching that place where they're going to hit a wall. And, when somebody comes to me and says that, and they say, can you help me? I get really nervous. I get nervous for them because morally, I can't guarantee anything when somebody's in that, difficult, desperate place. And there is what they call moral hazard of kind of taking on work when it's in that place. But if you're in that feast and famine, the only way to escape it is not to kind of throw money at lots of different things. If you're in that cycle of feast and famine, it's actually to spend a bit of time and go, what am I actually selling? And you may not feel like there's time to do this, but trust me, if you want a quicker sales process, if you want to recover from that famine cycle, the first step is to go, what am I selling? And define it and simplify it. Yeah, more complicated things do not help you sell. The more complicated you make it, the harder it is for people to grasp its value. And so the reason why my offer succeeded is because I said, I'll deliver 3 months worth of content that will grow your engagement and get seen by more of your ideal clients. It was clear. The outcome was clear. The inputs were clear. The price was clear. And if I want to make it easy to sell, I have to show them what I'm solving and how I will solve it. That's why my offer worked. If you're in a cycle of feast and famine, this is the first thing you should do. Clarify what is the one problem I'm solving. Now, interestingly, in my accelerator, we have a worksheet. It's called a GTM. It's like the anchor document of how you basically win clients on LinkedIn. And the first question in that is asking people who join the accelerator, what is the one problem you solve? And I've been running the accelerator for 5 years. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people been through the accelerator. And I can tell you now, that first question is often the hardest one people struggle to answer. They'll tell you what they do. They'll tell me what they do. They'll tell me 10 different things. But to this day, nobody has answered that question in one sentence. Nobody's been able to say, this is the problem we solve. Now, by the end of the process, they can, but that's the first step. I mean, people are looking for like lead generation tactics and tricks and the next, hack and all this stuff. The biggest hack is solve one problem and decide what problem that is. And, surprising how many people, you just go and do an exercise after listening to this. Write down on a piece of paper, what's the one problem I'm solving? And see if you can answer it. What's the problem your audience has that you're going to solve? See if you can answer that in 10 words or less. Because if you can't, that lack of being able to answer that problem will trickle down into everything you do. And I spend a lot of time here, and sometimes my clients fight me because they want to move on to lead generation. They want to move on to content creation. They want to move on to all the bits that will make them money. And a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them don't get that if they cannot define that, how can they make the content? How can they decide who they connect with? How do they decide the approach that they're going to take and the message they're going to use, whether that be through webinars, outreach, content, whatever? And most people don't get this, and they miss the opportunity, or they jump straight to action, and then basically their lead generation activity, their outreach, their content all becomes convoluted. The clarity is not there. And so if the clarity is not there, the consideration time, the education that you have to do to get people to buy is much longer and much more long-winded. So if you cut corners on defining what you're solving, it extends how long it takes to get a sale. Literally takes longer on the other side. And some of you might be saying, well, I know what problem I solve. Okay, write it down in less than 10 words. Write the problem that you're solving down in less than 10 words. And, everybody says this and thinks they know this, but actually when they go to write it down, they cannot write it down. And if you cannot write it down, that means you cannot articulate it in content, in conversation, in person with people. If you cannot write it down in less than 10 words, you cannot articulate it anywhere else. So that mindset shift of actually I need to simplify what I'm doing to make it more clear, to reduce the resistance, to reduce the friction, will actually shorten the amount of time it will take for somebody to buy into you, buy into what you offer, and buy the thing, give you their money. So that mindset shift of more clarity up front will shorten the sales cycle and the marketing cycle was and is the most important thing I want you to take away from this episode, because it's massive. Then you can actually you need to get into this place of always be marketing. Always be marketing. When I'm busy, I'm marketing. When I'm not busy, I'm marketing. Always be marketing. Now, marketing doesn't have to take the form of, buy my stuff, promotions and pummeling people with messages. It's about an attitude of I've got a content schedule going, and I've got a routine of what I talk about and what I post about. I do a wow post, which is something else I teach people to do. Wow posts are killers for getting leads. So I'm doing my content like clockwork, even when I'm busy. I've got a plan of daily actions that I'm doing on LinkedIn, on my email list, on my website, or my newsletter, or whatever I'm doing. I have regimented stuff. One of the big things that kind of grieves me, and I know that's dramatic, but it does grieve me, is people spend all this time building email lists. They get people to subscribe and then they don't use it. They don't talk to their audience. They don't add value because they've been busy. And I know people who've got an email list bigger than mine and they don't use it because they're busy. Now, you think then, what's the consequence? Why does it matter? They're still there. I can go back to them at any time. No, they go stale. If they don't hear from you, I know this sounds so strange, right? If you don't consistently talk to your email list, right, you will not make an impact with them. And then when you restart, they go, oh, don't listen to this anymore. You lose subscribers because you don't keep talking to them. So you want to have that repeatable process that you're doing day in, day out, week in, week out, whether you're busy, whether you're not, whether you're rich and making loads of money or whether you're broke, you run it. Because most marketing has two effects. And I talked about this in the accelerator recently. There's the short-term effect of what do I get from something now? And, I would say 80% of everybody on the internet is focused on what do I get now? What do I get now? Content is one of those places where it's like people give up posting content because what do I get now? One post didn't work. Another post didn't work. Content is a long game. Email newsletters is a long game. There's short-term results, yes, but they're in few and far supply, short supply. And then there's the long-term results. Newsletters, content, websites, they're all long-term assets. Podcasts, long-term assets that take effort and investment for a bigger long-term payoff. Often what people do is they sacrifice those for basically, what can I get now? Cold DMs, short-term. Paid ads, short-term. Outreach, direct outreach, all short-term. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a mix, but if all you're doing is doing short-term stuff to plug holes, which is what I did, you never get out of it. You never get out of it. The things that have got me out of being in feast and famine have been my email list, my content, and building my personal brand and authority so that people come to me. Most people on the internet who say that they want these things, they want inbound leads, they want clients queuing up to work with them, they want that, but are not prepared to do the day in, the day out for years to get it like clockwork. I do a webinar every week. I teach people to do a webinar every month. I do them every week, tell them to do it every month, right? Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because it's a great way to build your brand consistently. It's a great way to build that authority and trust, but it's also a great way to generate leads. Some people might come to one webinar and convert immediately, and some people might come to 2 or 3 before they convert, and some people might come to 20 before they convert. But the issue is we've got to have that rolling system so that you don't have the feast and famine. That means being really strategic about what marketing you do, what marketing you don't do. That doesn't mean you focus all on the short term, and it doesn't mean you focus all on the long term. A 60-40 split, 60% long term, 40% short term should be the good mix. Most people don't even think about this. They don't even think about, what am I doing to get leads this week? And what am I doing to build impact, revenue, and inbound leads in the long term? 60% of my effort should be there, 40% should be in the short term. And as that system starts to roll, guess what? You get out of feast and famine and you never go back there. You never end up back there again because you've built a system. So what are the takeaways from this, right? Feast and famine will always exist until you get clarity on what your problem you're solving. You package that up into something that's clearly valuable for your ideal clients. And then you have both a short-term and long-term strategy to generate leads and convert those leads into clients. Short-term, 40% of your effort, 60% on your long-term. You don't do those things, guess what? You will be in exactly the same position this time next year if you're in the pinch right now. Or, worst comes to the worst, you don't find a way out of these, endless feast and famine cycles, and you end up quitting and getting a job, or you end up in that horrible situation I was in, and I would not wish that on anybody. So simplicity is your friend, and simplicity will scale, and it will save you from feast and famine. But if you make things too complex, like unclear offer, you can't articulate the problem you're solving, you can't do all of those things, you are making it more complicated for your buyers to see your value. That means it will be harder for you to sell and market what you're doing, because the education that you will have to do is so much higher. The simpler I make it, the easier it is they can go, I get it. The more complicated I make it, the harder it is for them to see, I get it. So my journey, my 13 people who saved my ass, I could probably not do that again on LinkedIn in the way I did back then. There's no way I would get away with that because the platform's more mature, it's more complex, and people's DMs are a lot more noisy. So in one sense, the options to fix that gap are more limited today than they were a decade ago when I fixed that problem. So if you're riding high right now and you're pretty comfortable right now, this is the time to invest in the systems and build those out. It's not when you're less busy. If you're struggling right now, and it's tough, for a lot of people it's tough, you need to start building those systems. And I get you're going to be focused on the short term, but if you keep focusing short term, you'll never get out of it. You'll never get end the cycle. And look, if it is tough, I love you guys and the support you give me on my content and my podcast. If it is tough and you're struggling with ideas, come and talk to me. Yeah, I'm not, if you're struggling, come and talk to me. Come and message me on LinkedIn. Come and find me on Instagram and tell me where you're at. I want to support you. I want to champion you. It's not fun being in that tough place. I've still got the scars from it. I still, feel that kind of fear from being in that place. So if it is tough, come and talk to me. But get out of it. Let's get you out of this. Let's get all of you out of this. If you're riding high, don't get into it. And if you're in the tough spot, let's get you out of it. Come and find me. Come and message me. But this is how I got out of it. I went from broke to booked, and I vowed I would never go back into that place. And that's why I'm always marketing. And I coined the phrase, always be marketing, rather than always be selling from the film, always be marketing. And that's done me really well to keep me out of broke and fully booked.